So we have some bad news here for Donald Trump as it pertains to one of his 578 court cases. So this is in CNN. They say special counsel goes directly to Supreme Court to resolve whether Trump has immunity from prosecution. So this is one of the arguments the Trump side has made in court. They say, look, it's very clear that when you're a sitting president, you can't be charged with anything. So therefore, any actions taken as president are immune from prosecution. This is an argument that they've been making. Now, lower courts have said, no, because when you're president, it's not like every single thing you do is in your capacity as president, right? When you go and when you take a personal phone call with somebody, does that count as your action as president? No, the actions as president are you're signing an executive order, or you're signing a piece of legislation, or you're doing international diplomacy, or you're the commander-in-chief and you're making a decision on that front. It's not like every single thing you do is an official presidential action. So, therefore, all of the actions he took around January 6th and the fake electors slate, you chose to do that. It wasn't in your capacity as president. Therefore, you can be brought up on charges around those things. So, but look, here's the thing. Whether or not the Trump team actually believes the counter argument is not even really the point. What they're trying to do here is drag out the case as long as possible. Why? Because look, their theory is, well, we just have to stall until Trump can win the election, and then we're good, because then they can't do anything when he is a sitting president again. So that's really what they're thinking. Jack Smith is like, okay, I need to find a way around this. And he went directly to the Supreme Court. He didn't go through the regular appellate process. He went directly to the Supreme Court and said, we need an expedited decision on whether or not he's immune. And the Supreme Court chimed in and said, we're going to hear that. Interesting. So here's what they say. Special counsel Jack Smith on Monday asked the Supreme Court to decide whether Donald Trump has any immunity from criminal prosecution for alleged crimes he committed while in office. The first time that the High Court will weigh in on the historic prosecution of the former president. The extraordinary request is an attempt by Smith to keep the election subversion trial, currently scheduled for early March, on track. Smith is asking the Supreme Court to take the rare step of skipping a federal appeals court and quickly decide a fundamental issue of the case against Trump. Smith's team has asked the court to review District Judge Tanya Chutkan's ruling that as a former president, Trump is not immune from the election subversion prosecution case brought in Washington, D.C. Lawyers for the former president have argued that Trump's alleged actions over the 2020 election results were part of his official duties at the time, and therefore he is protected by presidential immunity. So look, let's pause to think about how absurd that argument is here. By the logic of Trump's team, literally nothing he does as president could be illegal or unconstitutional or wrong. Like, it doesn't matter what he does. Every single thing is allowed because I am the law. It's the old Richard Nixon defense. I am the law. If the president does it, it's not illegal. Prosecutors also asked the court to decide whether Trump is protected by double jeopardy. Defense lawyers have asserted that because Trump was acquitted by the Senate during his impeachment trial, that he cannot be criminally tried for the same alleged actions. I love this. So in other words, one of the arguments you hear all the time, and you hear this in the context of the Biden impeachment inquiry, is like, hey man, look, impeachment is not a legal process. It is a political process, so you don't have the same standards of proof. So for people saying, oh, where's the smoking gun? You don't even need a smoking gun because it's a political process, not a legal process. That's the argument they make. In terms of Joe Biden, when it comes to Trump, they're saying actually he's protected by double jeopardy because that was some form of a judicial proceeding, impeachment, and this is also judicial. So therefore, it's double jeopardy. You have to dismiss it. These are weak arguments. Later Monday, the Supreme Court said it will expedite consideration of Smith's petition to rule on the question of whether Trump deserves immunity. Trump has until December 20th to file a response. As president, Trump has said over and over again, this prosecution is completely politically motivated. A Trump spokesperson said Monday, there's absolutely no reason to rush this sham trial except to injure President Trump and tens of millions of his supporters. President Trump will continue to fight for justice and oppose these authoritarian tactics. That's the height of irony that he's calling their tactics authoritarian. Meanwhile, he was trying to stay in office even though he lost, which is like the definition of authoritarianism. So we'll see what happens. But when this was filed by Jack Smith, Trump responded on Truth Social or through a statement, and Trump melted down. So look at this. Statement from Trump spokesperson on deranged Jack Smith's filing with the Supreme Court. I love how it says from Trump spokesperson. Meanwhile, like, the spokesperson wouldn't say deranged Jack Smith. The spokesperson would just say Jack Smith. Obviously, this is Trump. Crooked Joe Biden's henchman, deranged Jack Smith, is so obsessed with interfering in the 2024 presidential election with the goal of preventing President Trump from retaking the Oval Office, as the president is poised to do, that Smith is willing to try for a Hail Mary by racing to the Supreme Court and attempting to bypass the appellate process. Deranged may need to be reminded that the Supreme Court has not been kind to him, including by handing down a rare unanimous rebuke when the court overturned him 8-0 in the McDonald case. By the way, let me just pause on this real quick. That was the Supreme Court saying corruption is okay. We are okay with corruption. So it's ironic that Trump ran on, drain the swamp. We're going to drain the swamp. Meanwhile, this point he's making here is the Supreme Court wanted to fill the swamp more, and I'm in favor of it. So it's all, with Trump, it's all about him. It's not about anything ideological. It's not about anything when it comes to policy. It's all about him. So the whole drain the swamp thing was just a clever posture to ride a wave into power. That's what it was. Because here he is saying, I love the swamp. McDonald was released after his obvious corruption. The Supreme Court let him go. All right, let's continue. As President Trump has said over and over again, this prosecution is completely politically motivated. It is an unprecedented attack against crooked Joe Biden's political opponent, Banana Republic style. There's absolutely no reason to rush this witch hunt to trial except to injure President Trump and his 150 million at least supporters. President Trump will continue to fight for justice and oppose these authoritarian tactics. This is embarrassing, right? This is embarrassing. We'll see what the Supreme Court says. But the fact of the matter is, for him to swat away all of these cases, homie, there's 91 criminal charges against you. 91. And I actually buy into the Mark Levin point on this, where he said, what, you don't think they're going to get him on at least some of these 91 charges? That's my reading of the situation as well. And he already went down on the fraud case, so clearly he's not Teflon anymore. He's going to have to pay a fine of up to $250 million. He's going to lose his business license in New York. When it comes to a lot of the classified documents cases, those, insofar as I understand it, are kind of open and shut, right? So then the question just becomes the timeline. The question is, how quickly can you get him in jail? How quick? And if you can get him in jail pretty quickly, okay, then we're good. Then you might even have a different Republican as the general election nominee. But it all depends on the timeline. If you can't get him in there quick enough, then we're in trouble. I mean, we're in trouble no matter what. This country's in trouble no matter what. This is the calm before the storm. It's about to get really bad. But of course, you should determine all these things before the general election. I would say before the primary election, right? But that's not going to happen, unfortunately. So we'll see how the Supreme Court rules. I'm not going to venture to make a prediction on how the Supreme Court will rule. Because, I don't know, it just seems... It would be a little surprising if they said, yeah, you can get away with absolutely anything. That actually would be surprising, because the Supreme Court, even though they're very conservative, you have to keep in mind, they're old school conservative types. They're standard establishment Republican types. You know, they're like, if you want to think of a politician to compare them to, you got to go like Mitt Romney style almost. So that might bias them against Trump on this, or at least that might bias them in favor of the obviously correct legal position on this. But you never know with the Supreme Court. So we'll have to wait and see, but I'm happy Jack Smith filed this. I'm happy the Supreme Court is taking it up, and we'll see what happens from here. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.